When you think of Saudi Arabian football nowadays, you'll think about a lot. With all the superstars who've moved to the Saudi Pro League, as well as the fact that Saudi Arabia are pretty much the confirmed host of the 2034 World Cup, it's fair to say the Middle Eastern country's been making a lot of noise in the footballing world. But only 5 years ago, they were just little guys. No one outside of Asia really knew anything about them, whether it was the Saudi Pro League or the national team. So, in a desperate attempt to both improve the national team and get the eyes of the world on Saudi Arabia, the Saudi FA struck up a deal with one of the biggest leagues in world football, La Liga. It didn't really work. In the 2000s and 2010s, the rest of the world did not take Saudi Arabian football seriously by any means. In the 2002 World Cup, Saudi Arabia finished bottom of Group E, losing their 3 games by a combined score of 12-0. The main reason for this was their first game, in which Germany battered them 8-0. This remains the largest World Cup defeat of the 21st century to this day. The 2006 World Cup was slightly better, as Saudi Arabia gave it a point in a 2-2 draw against Tunisia, but were no match for Spain or Ukraine and finished bottom of Group H. Saudi Arabia would then fail to qualify for the 2010 and 2014 World Cup. Basically, if Saudi Arabia didn't qualify for the World Cup, no one would miss them, and if they did, then you'd pray they'd end up in the same group as your country. But as we head into the later years of the 2010s, the tide finally began to turn for Saudi Arabia. In 2018 World Cup qualifiers, Saudi Arabia beat a strong Japan side 1-0 in front of 62,000 home fans in Jeddah, thanks to a Fahad Al-Muwalad strike. This win put them in second place of their qualifying group, narrowly seeing out Australian goal difference and sending them to their first World Cup in 12 years. But despite the fact that Saudi Arabia were back in the World Cup, they once again appeared to be one of the weakest teams in the tournament. And their group in Russia wasn't easy either. The strongest team in Saudi Arabia's group was Uruguay, and while Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani were starting to exit their prime, they were still good enough to strike fear in the heart of any opponent they played. Saudi Arabia also had Egypt in their group. Now 12 months ago this might have seemed like a favourable draw, but if you remember the 17-18 season, you'll know that one Egyptian man had recently touched down Liverpool and was eating Premier League defences for breakfast every single week. Yes, I am of course talking about Mohamed Salah, who the Saudi defence were going to have to find a way to stop. And finally in Saudi Arabia's group, there was Russia, who were the hosts. And you can never really write a host nation off. So yeah, tough group. Luckily for Saudi Arabia, they had a plan. You see, Saudi Arabian footballers never really play overseas. This is because of money. Despite being poor in quality, the Saudi League actually pays really well. This leads to Saudi players being happy to stay at home and play in the SPL. While this is great for the SPL, it's not so good for the national team, as their players don't get nearly enough competition. And at the start of 2018, about 6 months before the World Cup, the Saudi FA recognised that. So, they struck up a deal with one of the greatest footballing leagues in the world, La Liga. The deal was simple. Saudi teams would loan players out to the Liga teams. These players could then train and play with some of the best players in the world and prepare themselves for the 2018 World Cup. Although, as pointed out by Forbes writer Steve Price, it seemed like the league would be getting the short end of the stick with this deal. And perhaps Saudi recognised that too, because they agreed that the SPL teams would pay the full wages of the players, meaning the league clubs were really just getting a free play for 6 months. But enough rambling, let's meet the players and teams involved. While the biggest teams in Spain like Barcelona, Real Madrid and Atletico didn't get involved, there were still some noticeable clubs who loaned in Saudi players. One of these teams was Villarreal, who got 2 players. The first was unknown offensive midfielder Jaber Issa. Issa was only 21 and yet to really do anything at club level, although the Saudi national team clearly had high hopes for him as he had recently made his debut against Oman. The other player Villarreal got was more noticeable. He was Salam El Dosiri, and if the name rings a bell, it's probably because he scored against Argentina in the 2022 World Cup. And while that obviously hadn't happened at this point, he was still one of Saudi's best players. Villarreal hoped that the pair, but especially El Dosiri, could help Villarreal in their push for Europe. At the time they sat 5th, 4 points behind Real Madrid. Another Saudi player who was loaned out to Spain was the man mentioned earlier in this video, Fahad Al-Muwalad. Al-Muwalad joined a relegation third in Levante side, with fans and media dubbing him the Saudi Messi. Another Saudi player who went to the league was Yahya Al-Shiri. Al-Shiri was a tricky playmaker who could play as either a winger or a number 10. A mid-table side of Leganes would be his home for the second half of the 17-18 season. Leganes also signed a young defender in Marwan Othman. Meanwhile, some Saudi players actually signed in Spain's second tier, the Liga 2. One of these players included was Ali Al-Namir, who actually has a pretty interesting story. Al-Namir was called up to Saudi Arabia's senior football team for the first time aged 26 despite never playing professional football in his life. But he impressed for the national team and actually signed for Al-Shabab before immediately being loaned to Numancia. While many at 26 not playing pro football, next he tried to help a Spanish side win promotion to Liga so they can play against Messi and Ronaldo. Life. Other players who went to Liga 2 include defensive midfielder Abdul Majid Al-Salahim, who went to Rayo Vallecano, defensive midfielder Nour El Moussa, who went to Real Valladolid, and a young striker by the name of Abdullah Al-Hamdan, who went to Sporting Gijon. Unfortunately for Gijon, they stuffed up announcing the forward. The club tweeted that they had signed Al-Shabab Abdullah, not Abdullah Al-Hamdan. Al-Shabab, of course, is the club that Al-Hamdan played for. Embarrassing! But surely that wouldn't be a sign of things to come for the Saudi players. Surely it was just an honest mistake from the Gijon admin. Oh no, it was definitely a sign of things to come. So what, I hear you ask? The Saudi players didn't play well? How about they didn't play at all? Out of the 9 Saudi players loaned out to Spain, 7 of them didn't make a senior appearance with their new Spanish clubs. 7. Firstly, none of the Liga 2 players ever played. Rayo Vallecano won the title, but that was in no thanks to Abdulmajid Al Salahim, who never saw the pitch. And Nour El Moussa didn't play for Rayo Valladolid either. Abdullah Al Hamdan's most memorable moment in Spain was Cajon's Twitter admin forgetting his name, and Ali Al Namir never played for Numancia. Yeah, the guy who had never played professional football at age 26 wasn't good enough to play in the Liga 2. Who could have possibly seen that coming? But hey, did it get better in the main tier? Not really. Out of the 5 Saudi players that were loaned to the Liga, 3 of them never played a senior football game in Spain. Despite loaning in 2 Saudi players in Yahya El-Shiri and Marwan Othman, Leganes never played either of them. And while El-Shiri would recover from this and go on to continue a successful career back home in Saudi Arabia, the same could have been said for Marwan Othman. As far as I know, Marwan Othman doesn't have a Wikipedia page, and Jansen Mark was telling me he hadn't even played a game for the club since 2020, so that kinda sucks. One of Villarreal's signings also never saw the pitch, with that player being Jaber Issa. Issa also failed to get his career going after that failed spell in Spain, as he continues to bounce around clubs without really playing any games. But what about the 2 main players who were loaned out to Spain, Salam Al-Dosiri and Vahed Al-Muwallad? Surely they hit the ground running, right? Al-Muwallad and Al-Dosiri played a combined 3 games in Spain. 3. 2 for Al-Muwallad and 1 for Al-Dosiri, and all these appearances came long after they signed. Now don't get it twisted, there was hype for these 2, especially Al-Muwallad, but on the 3rd of February against Real Madrid, Levante left Al-Muwallad out of the squad completely. And honestly, at this point, the whole Saudi-Spain experiment just seems like a waste of everyone's time. A waste of time for the players, the Saudi national team, the Spanish clubs that took them in, and the fans of all clubs involved. Al-Muwallad spent months playing for Levante's reserves, only even making Levante's bench once. But finally, 108 days after the Saudi players were loaned into Spain, one of them finally made his debut. In the 80th minute of a fixture between Levante and Leganes, in which Levante were leading 3-0, Baco Lopez subbed Fawad Al-Muwallad on for Enes Bardi. Al-Muwallad played the last 10 minutes of the match and became the first Saudi player to ever play in the Liga. Better late than never. 6 days later, Al-Muwallad was an unused sub in Levante's thrilling 5-4 win over Barcelona, and 6 days after that he played the final 15 minutes in a 4-2 loss to Celta Vigo. This would be Al-Muwallad's second and final appearance for Levante. On the same day, Villarreal played Real Madrid, and after 18 consecutive matches of not even making the squad, Villarreal finally released Salam El-Dosiri from the basement and subbed him on in the 57th minute for Javi Fuego. El-Dosiri picked up a yellow card in his first and only ever appearance for Villarreal, as they drew 2-2 to Real Madrid. And that game concluded the 17-18 La Liga season, and with thus, the failed Saudi Arabian Spanish experiment. Saudi Arabia loaned out 9 players to Spain just for them to all play combined 59 minutes. The experiment failed so badly that in the end, the 7 players who didn't play a single man in Spain weren't even chosen for Saudi Arabia's 2018 World Cup squad, which was the whole reason they were loaned out in the first place. But despite the experiment failing, did Saudi Arabia at least perform well in the 2018 World Cup? Nope. Russia beat Saudi Arabia 5-0 in the first game of the 2018 World Cup. Al-Dosiri played the entire match, while Al-Muwallad was subbed on in the 64th minute, but neither could make a difference. To be fair to Saudi Arabia, the results improved after this. The Saudis put up a valiant effort against Uruguay, only losing 1-0, and they even beat Egypt 2-1 with Al-Dosiri scoring a 95th minute winner. But it wasn't enough to make it out of Group A as they finished 3rd. Looking back on all this, I don't hate the idea from Saudi Arabia of loading their players into Europe to prepare them for the World Cup. I just think sending them to the Liga was way too over-ambitious. Had Al-Muwallad and Al-Dosiri gone to a weaker but still competitive league like the Eredivisie, the Premier Liga or the Super League, I have no doubt they would have played more and been in top shape for the World Cup. Meanwhile, the other players could have gone to a lower European league like the ones in Greece, Poland, Ukraine or Russia. As we all know, Saudi Arabia are once again putting insane time into improving their national team, and it's looking like it's working, but we can always remember the first time they tried and failed to do something similar in 2018. That is going to end today's video guys, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Make sure to like, comment and sub, and I'll see you next time.